think there's that piece around that that sort of difference of progression between facilitating a session versus coaching as well, isn't there, where we can facilitate a really positive environment in a session, and then really understanding the coaching interventions we use in the ways we're adapting the session, the practice design to really start to accelerate and support learning is really, really important. And I think to build on the point you said around adaptability, I think quite often we can coach and we see something not going quite right, and sometimes it takes bravery to step in.
Hello, my name is Sharon and I'm joined with Joe and Adam, and we're going to talk about understanding coaching impact. So without further ado, shall we kick off, and I'll get the first question. Good one. What does the phrase understanding coaching impact mean to you?
Understanding impact, for me, it's about your decision making, your emotions, your own coaching behaviours, and the impact that therefore has on somebody else. It's the ability to recognise what that impact on somebody else is. It's very much about awareness of others as much as it is about awareness of self, I think. So it's how we recognise impact that our behaviours and thoughts and approaches are having on other people. So.
Yeah, I think for me as well, it can be very much around understanding the support and development that you're giving to players. So, you know, how your session plans, practice design might be impacting players. If you're lucky enough to be able to track the development with something like an individual development plan or something like that, it's a really good opportunity to understand that your coaching practice is helping players to get better, I think, as well.
Yeah, and I suppose it sort of links into that sort of self-awareness piece around your reflection of, do you know the players that you're actually working with? And I suppose as well, like you may have a focus of a principle of play or a theme or an individual tactic you want to do with your players, but actually when you're arriving at that session ready to take your players on to those next steps, it's like, is this the right session for these players right now? Even though I've planned it? So it's, definitely I would say it's that self-awareness piece.
So how important is it for coaches to understand the impact they're having on their players?
I think it's really crucial, isn't it, really? It's the kind of crux of it in terms of understanding if you're helping players to get better. I think understanding their potential and understanding where they are in that process, and if you're doing a good job of having an impact positively on them, certainly from a sort of technical and tactical point of view, but also in terms of supporting them to grow as people and sort of culturally and environmentally, that you're doing the right things to help them develop. So I think understanding impact, and some of us will have different luxuries in terms of the amount of time we might have with players, or the things we have at our control in terms of access to IDPs or a wider coaching team, or whether you're just on your own on the grass with a group of players, it's different. But certainly understanding who they are and where they are on their journey is really, really important to help you support them, I think.
I think the measurement bit is important, isn't it? Because I guess a critical part of being a coach or an educator is to make some form of evaluation on whether or not actually the people that you're with are developing and improving, and then I think that evaluation can be different based on environment and context, so the age of the children, the environment you're in, whether it's grassroots and possibly less resources available, or a performance environment where you've got drones and all singing, all dancing. So I think the that understanding around what's the feedback here? How do I know if I or the staff have impacted a player or a unit or the team? And I think I always think back to working with younger children. One impact might be, do they want to come back? Do they want to be there? Do they have fun? Is it a stimulating environment that they look forward to? But I would always also argue at the adult performance level game, not necessarily using the word fun, but it's got to be a stimulating environment where the players want to come back, even if the perceived risks at stake, such as results and the business of football, are different to obviously working in the foundation phase with young children. So I think it's critical for us as coaches to just stand back every now and again and go, right, what are we actually looking, what are the objectives here, what are we looking to try and achieve, and where are we at in relation to that? So there's a reflective piece here as well, I think.
Okay, next question. What impact would you like coaches to have on their players, and how can they achieve that?
Well, positive one.
Yeah.
Yeah, a positive one. I think create an environment. For me, I want to create an environment where they want to come back, where they feel they can be themselves, and where they feel they can gain support to improve in the areas they want to improve, alongside a really supportive environment, a socially supportive environment.
Yeah, I agree massively. I think, like I said, even working maybe in PDP, even adult performance environments, I think an environment where the players feel cared for, they feel wanted, and collectively you're trying to achieve something that's probably more important than any single individual. So you belong into something, aren't you? I think there's a part of maybe the essence of what football is, that's part of belonging to the group that you're playing with. That's why we've all got our memories and our anecdotes and the games that we used to play in Wembley and Cuppy, and I think we have to somehow retain that even as the game becomes a little bit more serious. So stimulating, challenging. I think our role is to impact players in a way where they're adaptable as well. I think not just for football, but life, being able to adapt to the challenges that life can throw at you, the different footballing environments you might end up in. So if you come through the academy pathway, you might not end up playing for the first team at that particular academy. You might be going on loan, you might have a series of loans, you might go and work and play abroad now. That adaptability, there's some impact there for me as well.
Yeah, I think there's a huge amount of life lessons that can be learnt in sport, and as you say, not everyone's going to play at the top level, and a lot of people will play alongside a full-time job when they're older, or just stay connected for a social reason, to play with friends. So what again comes back to that point around making the environment enjoyable and engaging. And then I think from a measurable piece, ultimately I think as a coach you want to think that when a player leaves your care, they've improved, whether that's in terms of their technical ability and they're reaching their potential, whether that's a really, really high potential or whatever that ceiling looks like for the individual. I think you want to have an impact where you can say that you've helped them to develop to become a better footballer, but then also help them to develop some other skills that the game can teach you in terms of leadership or social skills and communication, teamwork, collaboration, all those things that can be really, really useful in all sorts of walks of life, I think.
That's good of them.
Yep.
Okay. Do you have any top tips to help coaches identify when they have positively impacted a player's development?
Yeah, I guess there's a few off the sort of top of the head, but again, it's that seen stuff. So there's some stuff that's really obvious to see in terms of, are they getting better at acquiring skills that we're helping to teach them? That's quite a visible thing that you can see happen over the course of a few sessions or a season. But then I think for me, probably the top tip is to ask the players. I think sometimes we get in a trap of not speaking enough to the players and getting feedback. And I think as a coach, be brave. Ask the players how they found the session, if they learned stuff, what they learned, check and challenge that learning, and ask them to see what they're taking on board and what they're not, and what's landing, and what else you'd be able to support with, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think, if you can make yourself more vulnerable and get that player feedback, what would make it better? Sometimes give them the opportunity, depending on how often you see your players. I know sometimes it might be only an hour, and depending what time of year you're training can decide how much time there is for that sort of guided discovery and player ownership. But yeah, if you can get them to share ideas, or even get their parents to WhatsApp what was their favourite part of the session to you, and what would they like to do more of, just so that you're constantly having that two-way conversation, because at the end of the day you need them to make these, solve the problems on the pitch. You prepare them through training, and if they know what they need, they do know what they need a lot of the time. So if they can share that with you, it can help you be more prescript and more personalised when you're giving them that feedback during the session.
Yeah, definitely. And I think if they can share it with each other as well, I think sometimes a gauge of how well, arguably the difference between maybe knowledge and understanding, how well somebody's actually understood and to maybe a slightly deeper level is for a player to actually, in their own words, explain what they think the coach is intending for them to understand, and however that might be, including using props or a tactic board, or just go on the field and do it. And so often those kind of little skills where you're getting players in pairs and units and empowering them and this, that and the other. And I think even maybe at performance level, and certainly in PDP, in the the older ages of development, going into an adult sort of performance environment, I think you know, the word vulnerable, you know, like as a coach, I mean, I'm not even sure if it's necessarily vulnerability in that respect. It's engaging the players in the process of sorting out the problems. So, you know, what's happening in this match? You know, we're losing 1-0. Why are we losing 1-0? Who, you know, what's going on? What have you actually noticed they're doing? Well, they're doing this and this. Good. You know, how we're going to fix it then. What we're going to do as a team, right? Well, we're going to do that and that. You know, and engaging in and getting that collaborative thing where the players are in on the game plan and believe in it, and give it a bit of energy and some credibility. Really, I think things like that as well. So,
Good stuff.
Who's next?
It's me, isn't it? So, do you have any advice to help coaches notice when they haven't impacted a player's development as much as they could have done? You know, and what can they do to change that? So this is more to do with picking up on not impacting players.
I know we've spoken about it a lot, but I guess it really does come back to the better relationship you have with the individuals and the better understanding you have of them, so you can see perhaps what is a regular progression for them, or if they're not doing that, or if they're not potentially, if you're not as a coach regularly checking for understanding and asking questions to check that learning has taken place, it's very, very difficult sometimes to track that and to see that. So I think it's really, really important to regularly check in, as we've mentioned on the previous question, and then hopefully if you have a good understanding of the individual, you can start to pick up if they're picking stuff up, if they're developing. And I think always then encouraging reflective process as a coach in terms of after the session, what are my intended outcomes, what was I really going after, did we see it, if not, why not, what could I have changed in the practice to make sure that it comes out the next time. And just have that in the forefront when you're planning, and the key bit is that reflective practice. I know it's really hard sometimes. We're just in the car and all we've got is that 10-minute, 15-minute window or whatever it is on the way home, and then we're back home with family, or you're off to your day job or whatever it looks like. So I think, really trying to be specific to have that time of reflection, and ask yourself if you've seen players learn, if you got your intended outcomes out, is a good way to do that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think sometimes you're not a magician. You can't see everyone at the same time. So you must probably need to hone in on 2 or 3 players you're going to look at in a session a bit more each week. Because if you just keep jumping from every player, you're not going to get enough detail to sort of evaluate. So I suppose that's something I would say is always have, like, over 6 weeks of training sessions, have 1 week dedicated to 3 of your players that week and a different 3 the following week. So at least you're spending a good lot of time looking at them, and that could also link in with the match as well that you've seen them through. And also I always think what a good way is to avoid the negative impact, maybe at the start of the season, have like clear what's the coach's goals for the player, and the player having their own goals. What do they want to actually improve? Because then you can actually help, you've got a starting point with them to reflect on. Whereas if at the halfway through the season they say we haven't improved, well, what were we trying to improve on? It's very hard because it wasn't there, it's not measurable. So I think that would be my sort of top tip, I suppose, in a way, like have some sort of conversation with your players at the start. What do they want to improve on? And it might take you 2 or 3 weeks with the player at the start of the season to actually come up with what you'd like them to work on. But they can definitely come up with theirs because they know themselves, don't they?
Yeah, and I think in those discussions we can start to explore, how do I as a coach know that I've impacted you? So tell me a little bit about messages that land with you. You know, where do you, and certainly, you know, had a go at this with players before, and in some cases they don't always know. And you might have to give examples of, you know, do you tend to pick things up from watching TV, or is it something you read, or is it listening, or is it a bit of everything, or do you need to be out on the field doing it? So it's exploring and helping players understand when they get things, because that would also be a clue for us as to whether they've got it or not. And I think when we start then looking at body language, and I always like to think that we can sense when anybody, for that matter, not just a footballer, hasn't quite got what you're going for, and there might be some little nods and to pacify. And you know, I think sometimes, you know, children in particular want to kind of give off the impression that they've understood everything, but in actual fact, some of these sort of hidden skills that we may be talking about is that you just pick up on stuff and go, did you understand that? Did you get that? Should we just go through it again? And so I think having an understanding of what, on an individual level, how individuals are impacted the most might help us cater to their needs.
Okay. What can coaches do at training to have a positive impact?
Be present.
Yeah.
To have a positive impact. Be organised. Plan your sessions, but also plan for them not to work. And it's not a reflection of you, it's just sometimes reflection of the weather, reflection of the mood of your players. Be present. And I think for me, like, it's always about when everyone's there, welcoming them, making sure, trying to have that check-in in that first 10 minutes so that I can just sense how everyone's feeling. And then I know what sort of environment I've got. I try and you try and set up the environment so it's key, don't you? You have your area where they've got your tactics board, and you've got your areas where you're going to have your equipment, and they'll have their water bottles, and then hopefully you'll have your first sort of activation and then arrival activities, getting ready for the sort of development, whichever format you're deciding to employ that week, whether it's starting with a game and going whole part whole, or whether you're doing a carousel activity before you go into some game-based learning. But I think it's about just making sure you go there with a plan, but be prepared that you're not coaching robots. These are unique human beings, and you may have to adapt. Yeah,
that's a great point. I think clarity. That clarity around all the things that you just said. So the plan, what we're actually trying to achieve here together. What are the methods and practice design considerations at my disposal right now in order to help us achieve that. It's that ultimate clarity, and which is probably a lifelong thing. That I think for as long as anybody's in coaching, hopefully you're always going to be stretching and learning and evolving around those type of things. And then I think the adaptability bit, I think, is a massive point. So, the effectiveness of your message, and how you sort of get that across to people, because that clarity will create an environment that helps people adapt if it's delivered in a way where the messages land. So I think again, they're things that have got to go into our planning. And lastly, and building on the point of adaptability, is that I don't think anyone really knows what's going to happen. The beauty of coaching really is that the experience that you're in is in the moment. It's an organic thing based on all the things that you've said. The weather, the mood of the players, the mood of yourself, the opposition. So it might look similar, but it will be different based on different opponents, or a different day of the week, or different size dimensions of the pitch, or length of grass, or 3G, or whatever it is. So I think all this clarity and planning just gives us a really good opportunity to impact learning. I think in some respect the craft is almost knowing what strategies to use live based on what's happening when you connect with the players, and that's really difficult, but maybe something that we're all striving towards.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's that piece around that sort of difference of progression between facilitating a session versus coaching as well, isn't there, where we can facilitate a really positive environment in a session, and then really understanding the coaching interventions we use in the ways we're adapting the session, the practice design to really start to accelerate and support learning is really, really important. And I think to build on the point you said around adaptability, I think quite often we can coach and we see something not going quite right, and sometimes it takes bravery to step in really early on, maybe even 2 minutes into a session when you see it's not working, and change a dimension, or change an end zone, or put another goal in, or change the numbers, or whatever that looks like. And I think sometimes that bravery to step in and change something, if you see it's not working, it's okay. In your mind it's work, practice design seems sound. The players are showing us something different, and they need something different in the moment, so be brave and step in and change it if it's not working, to help you have a better impact, I think.
Okay. What can coaches do on match day to have a positive impact?
Well, so many things. Again, I mean, match day is an extension of the environment at large, isn't it? So, again, clarity. Players potentially a little bit more pressure on match day. Obviously more so in a performance environment where in some respects the result is critical in the eyes of many. So again, that clarity around what your roles and responsibilities are, you know, how you operate with your unit and players around you and things like that. Again, I think, you know, an awareness from the coach maybe in a performance environment or more of a results-oriented environment of the emotions and state of the players as well, and the coaching staff, so that simplicity can sometimes become lost when we maybe start talking for 10 minutes at half time because of our emotional state or the state of the game. And it's almost reining ourselves in to go, it's not how humans necessarily take on information and are impacted to the maximum. So actually, you know, based on what the score is, what are the two things that are potentially going to change the game, mate? What's going to get us a goal? What gets us back in it? What keeps us in front? And what, you know, what turns it from a draw into a win? And can we get everybody on page there? So, but again, in different areas of the sort of pathway, age and stage, again, you know, a vibrant, you know, it should be a stimulating environment. It's a chance, isn't it, for players to practice the things you've been working on. It's instinctively, you know, that element of competition and wanting to play, you know, is in all of us. I think one of the reasons why we probably play the game is just that, because it's a chance to play the game. So it's you know, it's those type of things, isn't it? I think the processes we've spoken about, I believe, are still there, aren't they? So ability to reflect. You might have your analyst team there. You might have a member of staff that's with you who can help observe and share things with you on the sidelines and things like that. So you know, I think it transfers. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's to build on that point. If you're lucky enough to have a couple of coaches, I think on a match day it's so easy to get drawn into the emotion of the game or to just follow the ball without taking time to really look through an observational lens at your players and check in for their learning. So if you're lucky enough to have one or two coaches on the sidelines, break it up, have a discussion beforehand who you're going to watch and what you're looking for. Don't try to see too much, you know, really nail in 6 capabilities is a great tool to use as an observational skill in terms of if we've worked on something in training, do we see it come out in the match? Are we linking training to match days? Using those tools to see learning taking place on the pitch. And really like what you said as well around team talks, around big believer personally around being solutions based. If we can be, it can be easy to be emotional and emotive, but actually giving some clear, concise information in a really short period of time that's going to help the players to problem solve is really, really important.
Yeah, and that's a real skill in itself, isn't it? And the only way you can get better at it is to practice it. And I think also, you know, when you get your players there, especially in the grassroots space, sort of at the start, recapping what did we work on in training, right? What are the 3 things we're going after when we've got the ball? What are the 3 things we're going to do when we don't have the ball? Just nice, simple stuff. And what, you know, try and remember what you're individually working on. I'll be looking for it, you know. And when you see them try some of those individual tactics or things they've been working on, giving them the thumbs up, even if it hasn't worked first time, the fact that they're trying it. So I think I'm just trying to think, if I'm a coach of my own, or quite a young team, I just want them to love playing and love being, and not being afraid to try the things we're doing in training, because invariably that's what we do train for, isn't it? For them to unleash that freedom and those ideas on the football pitch on a Saturday or Sunday. So yeah, for me it's but yeah, like we said, clarity. So I always say power of 3 for both. And one of them is usually aligned to maybe our philosophy or our culture. So I might even have on the top one of the cultural values today. We're going to be aim high and work hard together could be a value of the club. That would be the value for today. Or it might be never giving up. It could, you know, and there'd be 5 values, and that will always be there, so that we're living and breathing the values and philosophy of the club. It's not just there as so tokenistic. Or, you know, it could be that your mantra is better together. You know, and that could be right. That goes on that board as well. We're better together, because when we're in possession, we're going to do this, and this, and when we haven't got the ball, we're going to try and win it back quickly in 5 seconds or whatever.
So, do you have any top tips to help coaches improve their observations and reflection skills to help them to understand the impact that they're having?
Yeah, so I think again, being really intentional on and understanding what it is that you're looking for is probably the foundation. So whether that's linking into a player's individual development plan, if you're lucky enough to have those with the players that you're working with, or whether it's just a kind of crude understanding of what it is that you're working for with individual players, and then being conscious of what you're looking for and spending time to try and observe that. Again, to mention 6 capabilities, if we're going after a specific thing for 1 week with a player, it's then using that observational tool to observe the player in a game, at training, what sort of finite bits of that, whether it's mechanics, whether it's a social piece, whether it's technical, tactical, whatever that looks like, what do they need from me, how can I help them achieve it, and then using that same framework to observe whether they're doing it, and if they are, then brilliant, they're getting better, and if not, what can I do to help support them to get better, I think. So having real clarity around what it is that you're looking for is really important, and then probably not trying to see too much in one moment is to be comfortable with just looking at a smaller amount of stuff and with real focus instead of trying to see everything, I think.
Yeah, it's a real skill, isn't it? Because you're so emotionally attached to every player and the game. But you just have to try and teach yourself to say, right, I'm just going to look at this part. I'm just going to check this for 10 minutes. I want to just look at that. I mean, I know we're lucky now because there is more opportunity to record and not look at it in real time. But yeah, not everyone has that. And it's the time to watch it as well, isn't it? We can all have time to record. Having time to watch it is another thing altogether. But yeah, I would say, again, having the 6 capabilities is a good idea, and even the targets that you and the players have set for them, trying to reflect on that, even if it's if you're looking at how effective was that practice you did. Is it coming through in the game now, that piece of work you did on their positioning and what to do when they don't have the ball? Are they applying it in the game? Gives you that feedback. So it depends what you're looking for, but don't try and look at it all at the same time. Maybe piece up the pitch, the time. To help you do that.
Yeah, I think two interesting points really. I think the time element, so there's got to be a developmental side to this. It takes time, doesn't it? Coaching, it should do anyway, and certain environments you don't always get time, other environments you get loads of time. So that's something to consider, because that will have an impact on, potentially that idea about how many things you look at. If you've got more time, then you can probably take your time and piece it together across the season, whereas if you've got to turn things around you've got a 2-game week maybe in a performance environment, and you haven't got all the time in the world, you might have to almost shoehorn 3 or 4 points that otherwise you wouldn't want to do all in 1 week into one session, and you might only have 15 minutes because of loading and things like that to prepare the players. So I think that's important. I think the point about clarity of what you're looking for, I think, is massive. The 6 capabilities is an observation tool that can help with that process. I would add into that coaching positions. So how do we use our senses to see the things that we're supposed to be seeing? And it's something that I've thought about quite a lot over the years and still experimenting with it. So certainly in a training environment, you can adopt a range of coaching positions in order to specifically see the things that your clarity should inform. On match days, in some environments, you could potentially move into different areas. In other sort of environments on match day, you're not allowed to. But certainly had experience and have been around coaches who've maybe taken an elevated view. So they've come off the bench, gone into the stand if there's a stand there, and they've almost got a 360 view, and they might be looking at something specific, back to your clarity thing, such as security behind the ball. So they're almost dealing with transition to help the staff who might be more fixated on what's happening where the ball is. So you're actually looking away from the ball. So I think clarity around what we're looking for, clarity around how do we look for it in an effective way, and then your review process.
Yeah.
What just happened? What did I just see? And was I in the right place to see it?
Okay. So what advice do you have to help coaches have a positive impact when working in different areas of the game?
Well, it's the same across all pathways. You have to get to know your players. Get to know your players first, and then just understand maybe the different considerations you may need to consider for those different pathways, or who you're working with, whether it's foundation girls, foundation boys, YDP, boys and girls, or para. So, and I think it's just being sensitive to those needs. So when working from a para or disability space, it's about maybe having those conversations initially with parents or players if they're adults, and you can have, and I do this as generic with all players, I do a passport where I can find out about the players, what are their needs, what's the best way for them getting information, and also if they do have a disability, what is it, which side, if it's a cerebral palsy, which side is it, because then I'll know how to plan the session to accommodate that. And then it's about thinking about maybe, as opposed to, if you're working with foundation phase, they'll go at it 100 miles an hour. So you need to put the brakes in for them because they just don't understand how to pace their efforts. And that's just good coaching, these little considerations. But then that means that you're most probably having a far more positive impact on your players' engagement with the session. And they're going to feel they belong because they'll recognise you're accommodating the needs of everyone in that group.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? You're almost putting yourself in the shoes of the players by saying, you know, if I was the player, what would I want? You know, you want to belong, don't you? You want to be in a stimulating environment. You want to feel like there's something there that's relevant to them. It's going to help with their own personal development. So I think for the coach to then flip that and go, well, awareness of others first. For me to be able to do that, I've got to be adaptable. I've got to have different ideas, different approaches and strategies. There's got to be a desire to want to build rapport with the players, whatever age. You know, and with some players it'll take longer. With some players it might not happen in the way that you hoped. You know, the player will have a part to play in that as well. But I think it's got to be in our mind, in our conscious, that as part of you know, being coaches, putting the player first and trying to understand some of those individual characteristics are really important, and the impact that has on us to, you know, to develop our sort of toolbox of different strategies and different ways of working with different people. Given back to your point about, you know, the fact that people are different, everyone's different, means that, you know, coaching is quite it has complexities to it. It's a profession, really, isn't it? So.
Yeah, for sure. I think as well being mindful of age and stage. And I think certainly from those younger age groups and foundation phases, it's coming back to that point where you're really early on as a coach instilling a player's love for the game. So if we can make sure the environment, as you said earlier, that they're coming back is the first and foremost. We're having a positive impact. If they want to come back, we're having a positive impact. So then making sure that the environment is fun, engaging, stimulating, as you've said, in those young years to really help solidify that love of the game and increase the likelihood that they'll want to continue to play and they'll have a really positive experience with you as a coach. And then as they move through the ages and stages and their journeys, making sure that you're framing the appropriate level of challenge and stretch for them so that it doesn't become too easy and also that it's not too hard. And that's a real difficult skill set as a coach to land that in the sweet spot. But again, coming back to your reviewing of a session and considering how your session went, what went well, what didn't, what you might want to adapt and change, that can all help you understand where you're pitching your sessions.